Hi folks, Steven here. So, as you can see, Anne is with us, and we're going to be doing another Pokemon music side game discussion. Tonight we're talking about the music of Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness for the GameCube. This was a very late GameCube game, actually. Um, so we'll definitely be talking about that. We also have some feedback to go over, and we'll try and work in any comments from the thing there. I may as well toss in one quick here. It wasn't super specific, but yeah. So I got a comment on this on the YouTube side of this on the chat from I guess last night when I originally scheduled this. A huge fan of Gale Darkness, and after 16 years, looking forward to. Technically, it's a discussion, not an interview. Um,
But
but
nonetheless,
yeah, this game has a different, very different reputation from Pokemon Dash that we talked about last time. It has sort of a legacy, might be a better way to put it, that is considerably more positive, both as a game and I think musically.
mhm.
Um, I do kind of want to give folks a little bit of time. And I know we talked in our pre-discussion about a couple different things. One of those is you've played a very small amount of new Pokemon Snap. We'll do a full discussion at some point, maybe next year, maybe in 2023 at the rate where we go through these side games. The side games just continue, unlike some years where there's like one main series game or pair of main series games and then one maybe, this is where we start getting to the point where across multiple platforms and stuff. Um, our next episode is going to be a little bit different because the next game we have to cover after this is Pokemon Trozei, which has music and sound that is worth talking about. But the way it is structured does not have an actual lot of material. And we'll kind of talk about that and how we're going to supplement that in a little bit. But if you have any comments about the game we're talking about tonight, which is XD Gale of Darkness, or anything else that comes up here, please do give us a shout out. If you have any favorite tracks you want us to bring up, we have picked out, as usual, 3 for each of us. And stuff of that nature. But I think we're going to get going and get going into our actual discussion. So, the way this works is, first of all, we have to get ready to record, because although you're seeing this live, potentially, the way we actually do this is that we record our own audio and then we splice that together to get a nice, clean podcast audio version on there and stuff like that, so that we have a good sounding version to go on. So the way this works is we leave a pause, I do an introduction, and we sort of just go from there. Let me make sure my notes are available to me. Okay. And think about how I want to go in. Anne, are you about ready?
I am ready.
Okay, I'm going to hit record there, and I do a second record to get Anne's audio just so I can have a backup of that. But leave a little pause, and I will start our discussion. Hi, folks. Steven here. I'm on the phone with Anne from Pikapi Podcast, and we're doing yet another Pokemon side game music discussion. So we've come to Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness for the GameCube. This one is kind of interesting. It's a follow-up or expansion or whatever to Pokémon Colosseum for the GameCube. But although it takes place in the same basic world, there are a lot of new areas, a lot of new music, actually, and some other stuff we'll talk about in our game discussion at the end. But let's see. As far as when this game originally released, we'll start there. Came out in Japan in August of 2005. North America was October 2005. Australia and Europe were in November of 2005. So actually a pretty compressed time range than we've seen with some other games that we've talked about in this series. Let's see. As I understand, Anne, you don't really have too much experience with this game. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I've never owned a GameCube is the basic reason, and yeah, in my later years, I still don't own a GameCube, but it's also a lot harder to find. It's a game that I don't often see at conventions and stuff when they bring video games, and possibly because I think you were telling me earlier, right now it's running for like triple digits. So yeah, there's a lot of obstacles to me owning and playing this game.
Yeah, so very fortunately, I did get this game when it originally came out. I might have gotten it for Christmas in 2005. That's a pretty likely possibility, but I did pick up a copy, and yeah, as you mentioned, it sold decently well. It sold over 1 million copies worldwide, which I think was less than Colosseum, but still not exactly rare by any stretch of the imagination. However, if you look for this on eBay or Amazon or something, you'll notice the price. Yeah, I think I've seen it listed for like over $200. And I think that's attributable to a couple different things. One of those is, of course, the ongoing surge in retro game prices as a result of the pandemic and people having more free time. Also, it's the 25th anniversary year for Pokemon, which I'm sure has bolstered up used game sales a fair bit there as well. So you put all that together and you get that. So if you want to get a copy of this game, it's going to cost you. But I did get it when it came out. I think I actually talked to someone from the Pokemon Company about that in an interview at an event in Chicago or whatever that year. But definitely enjoyed it. I didn't actually beat it until within the last year or so, and got through the game that way. But I enjoyed it. I think it made some definite improvements over the first one, and I'm kind of disappointed that it isn't available more easily, which is, I guess, kind of too bad. All right, well, let's talk about some of the people behind this game. Since this is a follow-up to Pokémon Colosseum, it probably doesn't surprise you this game was also made by Genius Sonority. So they've been making Pokemon side games. I think their last game, as we're talking here, is still Pokemon Cafe Mix that came out last year. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something else from them eventually. And the music was done, again, by Tsukasa Tawada, who has worked on pretty much all of the Genius Sonority Pokemon games doing music. As far as the overall style, the Colosseum game had a definite Western edge, and there's still some of that in here. But with some of the new areas added, I think there's some more sci-fi elements, and as well as some more fun and happy, and sometimes even silly music. And how do you kind of feel the sound has sort of progressed, more generally speaking, since Colosseum in this game?
Well, it's definitely, a wider variety, a lot of different genres. I noticed like a kind of island tropical on a lot of the tracks I was looking at, and like it wasn't until one of the tracks I picked that I was like, oh, hey, finally, this is the Ore region, because this is the same Pokemon Colosseum world. But yeah, like there's way different options. There's like some cinematic, like movie score type music going on in places. So they've definitely broadened their horizons.
Yeah, the places that return from Colosseum have mostly the same music with maybe a few tweaks. Like I think Phoenix City has an extra section in its music and stuff like that. But the re-emerging places tend to have the same music as the previous game. But so let's see. Let me just transition to the next one. Let me just think. So going into some more specifics, as is usually the case, Anne and I have each picked out 3 songs that we're going to discuss in detail. The 3 I picked are Dr. Kaminkos Manor, I hope I said that relatively close, the Pokespot theme, and Citydark Island. And what were the 3 you picked?
I picked Jovi's theme, the Shadow Lugia battle, and not Rumba of Love, actually. We'll talk about that later. The Hexagon Brothers theme.
Yeah, we kind of ran into a track that in one case was mislabeled on YouTube, so we got a little bit of confusion there, and I had to clarify with Anne. But we'll be going sort of loosely in the order you would encounter these in the game, maybe not exactly, but we're going to start with one of my picks, which is Dr. Kaminkos Manor. Again, I hope I said that relatively close. It's very much a Japanese-sounding name there. Mm-hmm. But basically, this is sort of the good mad scientist area you go in there. Now, the exterior area has this very scary theme because there's lots of lightning and stuff. It's almost like the exterior in like a Luigi's Mansion game type of thing. But when you actually get in there, the music there has a very much a happy factory type of vibe with a lot of percussion. And was that sort of the impression you got there?
Yeah, like I love these kind of steel drums, and I think it's like pan flutes almost. Like she is the most vibin' person in the neighborhood, and it kind of, this is where I feel like it, like, yeah, there's a very tropical feel and a lot of instrumentation and not motifs, but some of the musical choices reflect some of the other areas and themes and music local to that section of the game. It's a very interesting choice, but I love it for her. It's eccentric, but also fun.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would say tropical there, but there's definitely some of those elements you talked about. One reason I wanted to bring this particular track up is that, for factory music in games, there are different ways you can go based on what type of factory you're going into. In some cases, you have a factory, it's a very depressing, monotonous place. Like, I'm thinking like Smithy's Factory in Super Mario RPG, or other games. I'm thinking also, I think Paper Mario Color Splash has a very similar factory-type setting with much more dour music. That is not what this building is going for here, clearly. And any thoughts on that comparison there?
No, just beyond, like, again, it's not the stereotypical choice, and good. I'm always on board for that, so.
Yeah, I'd say it generally makes sense given the character and their role. It's kind of interesting. I think there's also like an assistant character that you can actually see and describe some of the inventions that are kind of silly versions of various things, like a refrigerator that stops cooling as soon as you move away from it and stuff like that. So they're not going for the most serious thing, but it is kind of an important place and some important characters for the plot of the game. Speaking of plot characters, Anne, you brought up Jovi's theme. First of all, who is Jovi? And then tell us a little bit about this song.
All right, so yeah, Jovi is, I believe she's you, the protagonist's little sister. She's kind of a person that you have to talk to at occasion, and she kind of sets in motion a lot of plot things. She's kind of the typical little girl, little sister character. She's sometimes a bit annoying or has little moments of temper, refers to herself in the third person a lot. But she is a very cute design and much simpler compared to her brother Michael, who seems to be going for some kind of Winter Soldier meets Digimon thing. But I just was really taken with her melody because it's very simple. It's kind of got the pan flutes and almost kind of very outdoorsy, near tropical vibe that I also got from the Manor track. And it's very repetitive. It's been stuck in my head for basically since I started working on finding songs for this project. Just it's very cute and sweet and innocent and very recognizable, which I think is exactly what they were going for.
Okay, by the way, Anne, be careful there. You're bumping into the table a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to mention that before I transition back. Yeah, thank you very much for the pan flute. I knew it was some sort of, I put down organ, and I knew that wasn't quite right there because it's not quite that state of an instrument, but definitely reflects the character. I know you have a lot of younger siblings. I just have the one younger sister, and, I can certainly relate to this a little bit there. Anything else about this song you really wanted to call out?
No, because unlike your track, this is a very almost stereotypical music choice. But again, it's very effective at what it does.
Yeah, I think Jovi actually does have one thing for when she's sad during a cutscene or something like that. There's a secondary theme there, but All right. Well, let's go on to my second pick, which is the Pokespot theme. So, you may recall if you've played Colosseum that there aren't really any wild Pokemon to be caught in that game. And here in Gale of Darkness, there isn't really a whole lot either, but to sort of provide that, they have these things called the Pokespots that you can put down. I forget if it's called bait or something else there. And periodically you'll get a message that a wild Pokemon is there, and you can go ahead and try and catch them. Now, I should point out there are 3 of these places, but they all have the same music, which is kind of interesting. When you get there, you have a song that has kind of a banjo/country feel is what I put down for this. It honestly reminds me of a lot of the stuff from the 5th movie short. This is the Pikachu and Pichu Part 2, I guess, where they're on the train and stuff like that, and on Camp Pikachu is the name that's short in English, that's right. And were those similar to the observations you made?
I hadn't thought back to Camp Pikachu, but now that you bring it up, yes. Yeah, I was more kind of like, oh, this reminds me of some of those levels in Pokemon Colosseum where they went real heavy into the classical country western banjo, walking into the saloon and there's like a piano role playing kind of songs. So it was kind of nice to have that continuity. I hadn't thought of the almost anime connection there, though.
Yeah, I suppose this track does work with some of the Western vibes that are still carried over in places from Colosseum. So it certainly works on that level. But yeah, this definitely, like I said, it also brought me the Camp Pikachu vibes. Sort of the other point I wanted to make, though, this is used for 3 very different areas. They have similar functions, and I think each one has a different set of Pokemon that you can potentially catch there. But the locations themselves aesthetically are very different. One of them is a cave. One of them is an oasis in the desert, so it's like that stereotypical palm trees and a small lake surrounded by desert. It's one of those. And then there's also a rock Pokespot, which I think is outside, but there's tall cliffs all around you. And, I think of those 3, it probably works best for the rock one, not so well for the cave or the oasis, just because you kind of expect something a little more tropical sounding with the oasis and maybe something a little bit more open with the cave. I don't know. Anne, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like, to give directorial notes on a project I'm not working on, like, I'm always a fan of strong choices and atypical choices, but this is one of those occasions where sometimes the bold choice does not work. And to this one, to have the same theme that doesn't really seem to fit, like calls up very different images than the visuals are giving you, in this case is really not working. So I think this was an area where they might have benefited from like having maybe the same instruments and the same melodies, but play them with slightly different instruments to kind of vary it up a bit. I think would have been worth considering.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this was some case where they added the other 2 spots later, or changed their appearance or stuff like that on Tsukasa. That could certainly be the situation. And technically speaking, if there is something there, you're not going to spend a ton of time there before you just go in and, try and catch the Pokemon that's appeared there. So, but I did kind of want to point that out as something that maybe didn't work as well as it could have or we would have liked. All right, well, Anne, why don't we go to your second pick? This is the Hexagon Brothers. We did look at these, but yes, this is the Hexagon Brothers. Who are those exactly, and what's their theme like?
Oh, these delightful kids. They're a team of, like, they almost look like a Sentai team, like the Power Rangers. It's a group of 6 brothers, and they're all color-coded. They go red, a blue, and orange, red, purple, no, I said red already. Anyway, you get the idea. And they all have 6 in their name. It's special. They're the comedic relief, I think, of this game. You meet them and they're like always, they have like this intro that they do, but they're always miscounting how many of them there are. It's great. But this song, I originally picked it because it was named Rumba of Love on the track list I was going with. And I chose it basically because it did not sound the slightest bit like a rumba, and I thought that was worth discussing. But now that I'm listening to it and know the proper context, it's just a really cute song. It's full of fun. There's kind of a feeling of unsettlingness, where it kind of builds up and then it kind of feels like you're waiting for something to happen, and there's like moments almost of comedic little flourishes, and there's little whistles, and it's like, it reminds me of these brothers now that I realize that that's the situation. It's a kind of just a fun track. There's a lot going on. It feels like you forgot something at some point, so I think it fits what those characters were meant to do.
Yeah, the Power Rangers comparison, I guess going back to Super Mario RPG, that has the Axum Rangers as well. But yeah, these characters, each of their colors actually corresponds to what kind of Pokemon they have on their team. The red one will have a fire team, the blue one has a water team, the yellow one's an electric team, so on and so forth. But as far as I put down silly for this one. Excuse me. Because that was kind of what I had to say. As far as the track you mistook, that's also a good one, Rumba of Love. I would kind of wish I had a little more to say about the Hexagon Brothers song, but I think it was a good one to call out.
Yeah, and it's just a cute little moment in this game that's just a lot of fun. So I enjoyed it.
All right, well, we're definitely taking a bit of a tonal turn with our last couple choices. My third is Dark Island, which sort of the final area of the game, at least in terms of the main story progression. Trying not to spoil too much here, although we will spoil the final boss in just a little bit. But this is sort of the area where you go to face some of the trainers in the game. Now, one motif that is prominent in here is there's it's in a different key I'm about to say here, but it's the da-da-da-da, which a lot of you will know is a common set of chimes on like old like grandfather clocks and stuff like that. I wanted to point out this motif specifically for a couple of reasons, but first of all, I was pretty sure this probably had some sort of name, and it apparently is called the Winchester chimes, where there are different for the hour, into the quarters, and so on and so forth. Kind of the interesting thing is that it shows up a lot in music, and it's even shown up in Pokemon music a couple times, such as, let's see, there's Motostoke City from Pokemon Sword and Shield, and then a slightly altered version is a guest use in Slateport City in Ruby and Sapphire, which might kind of explain the lineage here. But as I sort of mentioned, this is a much darker melody, so it's more saying that, you're coming to the end of the game, the final showdown, your time is running out, or however you want to say it there. And I just sort of put out a lot of stuff there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, this is definitely your ending theme. It's so perfect. One thing I really liked, somebody pointed out to me, is that they kind of incorporate in the first 20 seconds, about 20 seconds in rather, the opening music of the game, like the main menu music, which is really cool. I think it really shows some forethought and continuity. But yeah, it's just it just feels like the climax. It's great.
Yeah, it's got kind
Dragon
of
Quest like.
It's got all the qualities you kind of want in a final area theme, where it's got the sort of foreboding and all that other stuff to let you know, you've arrived at the enemy ace, and you're going to take on the big bad and all that stuff. So, speaking of taking on the big bad, so if you I said it was a spoiler earlier, but it's on the cover of the game or whatever, and in the logo. So, sort of the last thing you do is you battle. His name is Greevil, obviously a portmanteau of greedy and evil. Is sort of the last boss in this game. In addition to
and Lugia being all dramatic. This is the one where I was saying, like, it's kind of a cinematic score to it. This is like songs that I might hear in a Pokemon movie. It very successfully like builds tension. There's a lot of timpani drums. I feel almost like I have heard this in some Pokemon movies. Like, it's very much scored in that style. So I think it's a perfect choice for an ending. This is your final boss theme. It's the only criticism I have is maybe it doesn't really fit musically with all the rest of the tracks always, but I don't know. I really like this particular track in isolation, so.
Well, I thought it was okay, especially like you combine it with City Dark Island, even though they're melodically separate, it definitely tonally fits there. One thing I wrote down is that there are a lot of very short notes, especially from like the orchestra. It's all synth as far as I know. Which sort of, I guess, keeps you on your toes a little bit there. Now, you mentioned movies, and since this is Lugia, we kind of got to contrast this to, Pokemon 2000, Lugia's Explosive Birth, whatever you want to call it, because this is clearly not going in the same direction as either score version to that movie, for sure. And I'm assuming part of that is just because it's a shadow, dark Lugia type of deal there. But I don't know, Anne, what are your kind of thoughts in that area?
Well, I think in our hearts we all know we want Lugia's theme in there. I think definitely, given that there is a difference between the Japanese Lugia's theme and the English Lugia's theme, that already creates a wrinkle. Because do you want the English release of this game to have a different... Do you want to rescore it to fit that theme in? There's probably some licensing issues going on there. There's probably a lot of hurdles that would have to be breached to make that happen. But I think deep down, like whenever Lugia appears, we want that do-do-do-do-do theme coming in. And it fits both with positive appearances of Lugia and negative shadow, mysterious appearances of Lugia. So, musically, I think there's no reason not to. Practically, in this world we live in, I can see why maybe it didn't happen.
I suppose so. I mean, we can also bring up stuff like the Hoopa movie and The Power of Us for things where Lugia's theme maybe wasn't handled exactly. But I really want to say this is a great theme. I'm fairly certain Tsukasa Tawada knew what he was up against when he had to write a Lugia battle theme. And he definitely put a lot of effort into this, just judging by how it sounds. I think I'm more okay with this version just because it is sort of a dark Lugia, a shadow Lugia. So if they were to use one of the versions, I think from either version of movie 2, I think they would have had to, change the key and stuff like that to make it work here, which I guess they could do, would be kind of interesting. One thought I had is if they ever remake the second movie, if they could incorporate this, at least in the dub, I know that Lawrence III, the human bad guy from that movie, does have a theme. It's I think by design not as memorable as Lugia's, but maybe this could kind of work there. I'm not sure. Structurally, one thing I wanted to bring up here, though, is that this is basically the last big battle of the main story. So this song goes on for a couple minutes, but I'm sure there's a lot of folks who, when they're playing it, only heard a small portion of it because they just chucked their Master Ball that they've been saving at Lugia to catch it. That is not what I did in my playthrough. I actually used that on something else and wound up using a bunch of timer balls to try and catch Lugia. So I ended up hearing quite a bit of this in my playthrough, as well as a lot of the rattling Pokeball sounds, because this is a very difficult Pokemon to catch. I just basically saw that some folks bring that up in the comments. And any comments of your own?
Well, given that I didn't actually play this game myself, I don't know if I have much to offer. I probably would have been in team Chuck the Master Ball, because I know when the legendaries show up, they tend to run away on me, and I'm never quite sure if this is the legendary that's going to stay put until I'm done with it, or the one that, like the Entei, where I have to chase it all over Johto. So I know where I am in life, so.
All right, well, before we move on to our kind of overall thoughts about the music of the game, I did want to bring in one comment we got in the chat room. This is from, Fat Albert 135. So there are a lot of new characters in this game, but one that returns is Mereb is back, although he does have a different theme song. I'm not sure if he meant his appearance theme song or the battle theme song. They're both, I think, pretty cool. The battle one has very much a electronic dance vibe, and I definitely approve of that one. And I don't know if you had particular thoughts on them rescoring Mereb for this game.
He is a treasure. Like, I definitely just love that when he comes, his music is like, and now for something completely different, we're gonna have a dance battle. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I can tell, like, looking through the comments, a lot of people like Mereb and his theme. I don't know that I have much to say about it. It kind of feels, it's very 80s. It feels very disco, and I love that. I was born in 86. I am here for it. It's a lot of fun.
Well, technically disco was like mid to late 70s and very early 80s as it started to fade out, but dance music is its natural successor. But there is a lot of tracks. We obviously mentioned Rumba of Love that we could have, we almost wound up bringing into our discussion, but despite the common criticism that this game doesn't offer a lot new, in the musical department it certainly does, and there's a lot of stuff we could have picked out. Most of the battle themes are in fact new and all that stuff. So did not material in terms of picking songs on this one.
Yeah, I'm sure we could get another 3 episodes out of this if we wanted to.
Yeah, so definitely if you somehow miss this game, please check the soundtrack. If you ever have a chance to play it at a convention or something like that, or for something, I would say seriously give yourself for that. But I should give, as I kind of said there, it's probably the most aspect because with most of the battle themes being new and very good effort on a lot of them. I'm not sure all the replaced battle themes for like the normal battle and the bad guy minion battle themes that I like them more or as much, but they definitely had effort put into them, and there's a lot of really memorable and diverse stuff. I think that's a better sort of overall opinion.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's definitely they didn't just stick to the same old when making this game. They branched out in a lot of ways, tried a lot of new things, brought a lot of new content musically to the game.
Yeah, I think Tsukasa Tawada did a very good job, as usual. You can sort of see in some of the later games he's worked on, especially like Pokemon Shuffle, how varied he can be and stuff like that. But there's a lot of evidence of that here as well, and that's very much appreciated. So good effort, despite this, potentially just being just a few new songs. They really did. He really did put in a lot of work and effort and refinement into it, so very much appreciate that. All right, well, we do have some other feedback to go through, so I'm going to punch up a PowerPoint here quick, and we're going to go through that if we can. Let's see here. All right. Well, we've got a few pieces of feedback to go over before we talk about our next episode and wrap up and stuff. So this first comment is, hopefully most of you have already heard this, but it is a bit of a downer. So this is from my interview with Ralph Shuckett that I did, I believe, back in 2014, if I remember correctly. This is part 3. This is the part about Pokemon 2000 specifically. And Gabriel Young put in a comment that just says, "Rip Master. Well, rest in peace." So yeah, unfortunately, the month before we recorded this, so April of 2021, Ralph Shuckett very sadly passed away. And I was showing this to Anne in our pre-discussion, and actually she had not heard of that yet. And you want to kind of talk about what's sort of your overall thoughts on his work on the franchise, I guess is the best way I can put it right now.
Well, it's hard to say. Like, the nature of the things that he worked on, he worked on Pokemon, obviously, the first movie, which is was my entrance into the fandom, really. And he worked on Yu-Gi-Oh!, he worked on Kirby, he worked on a lot of projects, probably more than I'm even aware of. So in a way, he was the music of not my childhood exactly, but like my young adultness and going into college age, which was a time of life where media and entertainment I was making a lot of connections with literary and storytelling and deciding what I wanted to be in life and all those things. So it's kind of very touching to think that his music kind of was a part of that part of my growing up, and it's always sad when somebody, passes out of this mortal coil. So, but he definitely left a lot to be remembered by.
Yeah. Like I said, this was for me about a month ago. I actually found out because his older sister posted a comment on one of these videos and thanked me for it, which, I'm obviously very, I don't know if proud is the right word, but glad to have been able to provide some level of solace. And we should mention Ralph does have a history outside of Pokemon. He was in a band called Utopia with Todd Rundgren for a few years. He's done a ton of other stuff. And obviously in this episode we talked a lot about Lugia, and he wrote the dub theme for that character. So, it's hard, and I'm definitely going to miss that, but left behind, as all great creators do, an immense catalog of wonderful works. So, but did want to give Anne a chance to sort of get her feelings out there. All right, well, on a bit of a lighter note, about a month ago, I put up an excerpt from our Smash Brothers discussion. So this isn't, I guess, explicitly Pokemon related. We did a discussion of the music of Smash Brothers for N64 and Melee as a single episode. And the excerpt I pulled out is actually about Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, which I had mentioned in our discussion kind of had, even then, when Melee came out, its sort of current reputation of being sort of the weird one, the different one, and so on and so forth. And found it kind of interesting that one of its songs had been used in Melee, although we had some ideas about that. We got a comment from Apple's Gosh, I think is how you pronounce that. It says, "Never thought about this, and it's one of my favorite songs from the game." Well, it is odd to use music from this more obscure Zelda game. I think the Fire Emblem characters at the time were even more obscure, so at least to me it feels less odd compared to them. So sort of the whole gist of it is that Zelda 2, being not the most popular entry in the series, it was kind of interesting to have its music used in there. And we sort of tried to come up with a few reasons. Maybe because it fit better with Smash Bros. Was generally speaking a side-scrolling game despite being rendered in 3D. But the comment here from Apple's Gosh is kind of interesting, talking about the Fire Emblem characters, which at that point were pretty much unknown in the West since none of their games had come out. I don't know, Andy, have any thoughts on any of this?
I'm not the person to ask just because I like video games a lot, but I wouldn't consider myself a gamer. So, like, I didn't recognize the Fire Emblem characters, but I also didn't recognize many characters and to continue to not recognize characters in Smash iterations. So I just may not have the perspective to properly comment on it, but that is an interesting thing to bring up now that it's brought to my attention. Like, if Fire Emblem wasn't really out in the West, then yeah, that's almost even weirder of a choice. But again, it's a Japanese game, so primarily Japan would have known who they were, I guess. So it not weird on their side maybe of things, but over here.
Yeah, there's some definite Nintendo, owned franchises. I mean, let me rephrase that. I mean, now Fire Emblem is very well known in the West. It started like in the GameCube and GBA era, which of course was right around the time, not long after Melee came out. So I'm not sure if that was some synergy there or what. But especially, with, I think, Three Houses is the latest Fire Emblem game. I haven't had really a chance to play it, but much better well known now. But yeah, you look then, not sure exactly. Let me think about that for just a second. So I guess you could say that, yeah, Zelda 2 certainly was not the most obscure place to pull from on there. All right, well, with our feedback out of the way, maybe wondering what's our next episode. Well, so chronologically, the next Pokemon side game that we released is Pokemon Trozei for the Nintendo DS. However, although the sound and music of this game is definitely, I really like it, and I think it's definitely worth talking about, there isn't really a lot to go around in this game. There's actually very little. It's another G Sonority game, so I guess right after this one, Gale of Darkness wrapped, Tsukasa Tawada did some work for this one, and then, like I said, I like the sound. There's not a lot to talk about. So, we do still want to cover it. So, to sort of lengthen out that discussion, we're adding an insert another song discussion. So, Ann and I are each going to pick out a song, most likely from the first two movies, that is on the soundtrack, but not actually in the movie. And we're going to try and pick a place in the actual movie itself, not necessarily the end credits or anything like that, that we think it would go. I kind of have my pick. Going back to our disputed Pokemon songs, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the episode or not, but I've kind of mused about making my way any way that I can in the dock building scene and part of that, although I might explore some other possibilities. And I know you're still mulling over your potential possibilities. You do have some time to think about it, but
I have some potentials.
There are a fair number of choices, and also it could be something from the Japanese side as well, as there are some things on the soundtrack that weren't actually used in the movies. But that'll be our next discussion. Until then, Anne, thank you very much for being on.
Thank you.
This has been Stephen Reich. All right, folks, thanks. All right, and then we're going to leave a little pause. And we're going to do a game, which we're making. This is all curse when I say this, but we are making decent time. Mm-hmm. I try not to, having just gone through it last month and edited the Smash Brothers discussion, which was well over an hour with our game discussion. We were covering two games there, but leave a little pause. I do have some notes on the game itself. I know, Anne, you didn't really play it, but
I have much less to offer, but
I assume you did play at least some of Colosseum, so we can make some comparisons.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. All right. Well, despite Anne's kind of lack of experience with Gale of Darkness, she has played Colosseum, and we're going to try and draw some comparisons here in our game discussion. Mechanically, there are really a couple of major differences. One of those is that I think the purification system in Colosseum got a lot of flack for being too inflexible and difficult to get Pokemon purified. They changed a lot of stuff in Gale of Darkness. Now, the first couple ones you have to purify go through pretty much the same process. You still have to battle with them for a while, put them out into battle, and all that fun stuff. But once you have a certain number of them purified, you can start using them and arrange them around other Shadow Pokemon to purify them in sort of this place that the game offers, in sort of the place where you start the game. I don't know, Anne, what were your kind of thoughts on the purification system in the original Colosseum? And does what I just described, does that sound like it would help you, or?
It's hard to say without actually playing it. Like, I do seem to remember the bits I played of Colosseum that I struggled. I also did. I didn't own that game either, so I don't think I really spent enough time with it to like really, get to know the system well. So what things look like when I'm watching Let's Plays and things, it does look like they've maybe answered some of the critiques and the comments that people have had about the original purification system. So I really like the idea of being able to arrange your other Pokemon around to kind of help with that process. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and there's a whole system there where if you sort of match the types in a certain way, you can speed up the process and stuff like that. I also think it's pretty helpful. I think there are more Shadow Pokemon in this game. Not that there were super few in the first one, but it seems that there are more this time around. I guess one other point of comparison, now when we talked about Colosseum, you had not had a chance to encounter Shadow Pokemon in Pokemon Go. Has that changed since, Anne?
No. I still have not found... To be honest, I haven't played Pokemon Go in a little while. I should probably go take a walk.
All right. Well, very different system there. You catch the Pokemon after you battle the Team Go Rocket person, and then you can purify it with a few candies and some Stardust. So, certainly, yeah, maybe a very different game as well. So it's not surprising. The mechanics are very, very different. But as far as going back to the Shadow Pokemon in Gale of Darkness, in Colosseum, there's only one Shadow move called Shadow Rush, which is basically a recoil move that does typeless damage. So it's kind of good against anything you use it against. But like I said, it does recoil damage, which is actually kind of annoying because then the Shadow Pokemon you're trying to catch can knock itself out with recoil, which not so great. Now in this one, they've vastly broadened that. There are many different Shadow moves. Now, I think they also make it more difficult for a variety of reasons because actually the Shadow moves are now super effective against non-Shadow Pokemon and stuff like that. So they do a ton of damage, and they have all sorts of different effects. And like I said, do you think the variety is a good thing there, or?
I mean, from a literary standpoint, I absolutely approve this change. I want those shadow attacks to be big. I want them to wreck my team. I want them to be a threat. From actually playing the game, I think I would beg for mercy. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. So when you fight Greevil himself, he has a full team of Shadow Pokemon to start out with, which includes the three, going back to Pokemon 2000, the three legendary birds from Gen 1 in Shadow form, as well as a couple other Shadow Pokemon. And I think most, if not all of them, have multiple Shadow moves, so they can really mess up your team there. So you kind of almost have to grind a little bit just to get kind of through that battle. So it definitely makes those aspects tougher, especially once you get to the cases where there are multiple shadow Pokemon on a team. So I guess they made the purification process easier, but actually battling shadow Pokemon, well, it is more varied, and in some ways I would say, I don't know if more fair is probably not the right word, but it is a lot tougher too. All right, so we kind of mentioned the other difference here. I forget his default name, but the player character is a lot less edgy than in the first game, in Colosseum. In Colosseum, you play, I think his default name is Wes, and he's like kind of a tough teen type of character. In this one, you're playing someone who's at least a few years younger and stuff like that. I don't know, Anne, how'd you feel about that change?
I'm not a fan of this design. He looks like he is going to the con and he could not decide which cosplay to wear, so he wore them both. Like, I'm not a fan, but he does look like he's happy, and that's what I want from my Pokemon protagonists. I want them to enjoy life. And so in that sense, he looks like he's not as much of a troubled teen, and yeah.
Yeah, so definitely a different origin story for your main character. Much more in line, I suppose, with sort of the main series games, at least in terms of age range. Definitely not an anti-hero or mysterious background character like Wes was in Colosseum. You also don't have the companion character like Rui was in the first one, which I guess, I don't know, maybe that at least cuts down the number of polygons on screen, better frame rate, I'm not sure. So now we had mentioned Mereb returned, and I think some of his cohorts did as well, but actually a lot of the other major characters are new in this game. I think Rui isn't in this game, but her grandfather or whatever is. But the evil team, in addition to Greevil being a new character, seems to have a bunch of new other folks. What did you think of that cast of characters, Anne?
They were interesting. I didn't take as many notes on those guys, but so let me look them up real quick. Yeah, I'm not, like, they were fun there, but again, like, given that I didn't play this game, I didn't spend a ton of time with them, so I guess I'm not sure I have a ton to say about them, but let's see.
About me is this very lanky woman. I'm not sure. It looks like at least maybe in school age, like that, but I think all or like that might be her name. Visually, I can't remember.
That's
the. I think that.
I was gonna say that's the pink-haired girl, right?
I believe so. Yeah. So that one definitely stands out to me. And then there are a couple of an evil scientist type guy. And a few other ones there. Maybe not as memorable as although I've played more Colosseum there, so maybe that stands out. Like I said, though, Mereb does return, so I guess they kept the one that resonated the most with fans and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of think that Pokemon kind of has an established tradition of having a team with a very recognizable costume and like a uniform and a cause that's just very obvious. And like, I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing to break away from that, because I'm always talking about how we don't need Team Rocket in every movie. But it one downside of that potentially is that it sometimes makes your bad guys a little harder to remember or harder to, I don't know, make a connection with. It's a choice that every developer has to make, I suppose.
Yeah, so it is kind of interesting they didn't bring. Let me think about how I want to, because this is going to be kind of the end of our discussion here. I wanted to sort of make sure we have a lead out from that. Yeah, so maybe not bad designs, but maybe not the most memorable either. So,
yeah, and again, not memorable to a person who mostly just watched a lot of Let's Plays, who didn't actually play the game. So, take that with a grain of salt.
I suppose I assume, Anne, that you wish you had, not just because of the price, but on the secondhand market these days, but for other reasons. I assume you really wished you had a chance to play this, huh?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't own a GameCube, but had I one, like, this would definitely be one of the games I would want to play. Like, it looks like it was a lot of fun, and there's so many little things that, years and years later, people are still talking about them. So it does feel a little bit like you're missing out sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I suppose if you did have a backwards compatible Wii, you could have played this on. They only picked it up before it went out of circulation and became very pricey like it is now. But yeah, I definitely recommend this game. It is gameplay-wise a more polished version of Colosseum with a somewhat different story, more areas to explore and stuff like that. But all right, I think we can stop the discussion there. That should give us something to work with there. All right. Well, so let's see here. And I don't know. You've been pretty busy, as you usually are, so I'm not sure that you've... Hopefully you can get some more episodes out soon, but...
We will no comment for a minute, but yes, hopefully.
All right. Well, always appreciate folks for tuning in. And like I said, next discussion is going to be Troze plus a little bit of bonus where we try to insert more songs into some of the Pokemon movies. So, All right. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Let's see.